1991, a year when the U.S. professional wrestling landscape was in an absolute state of disarray. WCW's reputation had pretty much been torpedoed to fucking death, almost sunk to the bottom of the ocean by Jim Herd. That goddamn idiot that ran off Ric Flair and so many others to the point that fans were chanting, "We want Flair, we want Flair," just a few months before this professional wrestling event. Jim Herd would be out of WCW by the very beginning of 1992, but this is not the WCW timeline. This is to talk about the WWF at the time timeline, where from the Royal Rumble to now, they had to re-rack, retool, and redirect a whole bunch of stuff. Hogan was in and out of the company, even though he was at the time the WWF champion. Then the upcoming Arsenio Hall interview. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. That didn't work out all that well. Randy Savage was retired, but about to come back, and the Ultimate Warrior had been suspended/fired because he held up Vince for money. Whether he deserved it or not, boy oh boy, that relationship was absolutely strained. But in the midst of that, the exploding popularity of the WWF in international markets such as the UK meant that Vince McMahon said, "Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to the Royal Prince Albert Hall. I should get a Prince Albert." No, Vince, you shouldn't. Linda will love it. She'll have her eyes on it. Vince, your wife's eyes are going in two different directions. You're fired. You're right, but you're fired. So nevertheless, basically the Royal Prince Albert Hall, the historic Royal Prince Albert Hall, yes, I know what it's called, work with me here, had 5,000 Londonese professional wrestling fans ready to cheer the hell out of the British Bulldog Davey Boy Smith, who was going to win that battle royal whether he wanted to or not. I'm John Renton with the retro view of WWE Battle at Royal Albert Hall. And there you go. It's a battle royal at Royal Albert Hall, but work with me here. So yeah, this is on WWE Vault, and is historic for the fact that they were really trying to feature Davey prominently. He had come back at the end of 1990, I believe. Had that match with the Warlord, which I still say is a pretty unsung, underappreciated match, at least from the early WrestleManias. And there are some, neat little tidbits here. I will say, though, before I get too far into that, I want to give a bit of a timeline in regards to how we got here for WCW and stuff like that. Let's go to WCW in. So we did the Black Scorpion angle that ended horribly at Starrcade 1990, almost a year before this, and then Flair won the title back from Sting, and Flair held the title pretty much until the, him and Tatsumi Fujinami had a bit of a disputed finish. All that stuff's going on, and then we get some good matches still, but the problem is Jim Herd just wouldn't leave Ric Flair the fuck alone. And however we feel about Ric Flair now, Ric Flair was WCW. As great as Sting was, as great as he would become, there were other people in there that were very good, but Ric Flair was the anchor. And then right before the Great American Bash 1991, we won Flair, and they were chanting that at the pay-per-view when Luger and I believe Barry Windham had a steel cage match, which, yeah, that wasn't very good. Turning Luger heel was fine, but yeah, just the way they did, it was very subdued. And by the way, Ric Flair had taken the big gold belt because he had a $25,000 deposit on, and Jim Herd didn't want to return that. And Jim Herd would be out of the company a few months after this particular event, but just the mere fact that it got to this point. The Road Warriors, Legion of Doom were in the company. There were the Nasty Boys were in the goddamn company shortly after, I believe, Halloween Havoc 1990. And they would be back in WCW by 1993. Later 93. But the thing is, WCW was just in a massive state of flux. And then you look at the WWF timeline. Pretty much from WrestleMania 1990, Ultimate Warrior won the title, and they had no heels lined up for him. As much as I don't like the Ultimate Warrior for a variety of reasons, whether he was good to a few people or not, the guy was a royal fucking prick, and I don't feel bad saying that. As over as he was, as many tickets as he sold, as much merch as he sold, as popular as he was, as much as I loved him as a kid, you gotta recognize when the guy's a piece of shit. But he also had no heels lined up that he hadn't already worked with. Now, Ted DiBiase, that was one thing. This is when they had a working relationship in Japan. You had New Japan, All Japan pairing. You had Tenryu starring SWS. They would actually do some co-promoted shows, even in 1991. I think SWS was done like soon after that, but I mean they drew some good crowds, but they just spent too much money. But the thing is Ultimate Warrior did not have any goddamn heels lined up. He faced Rick Rude at SummerSlam 1990. He had already faced him at the previous SummerSlam when he won the IC title. And then he lost the title to Sergeant Slaughter. We had stuff with Hogan, where he would end up winning the title from Slaughter. The whole Iraqi war that was done within a few minutes. It literally did not last very fucking long. The best idea, and this is something that was floated, rather, by the great Brian Last. Have Sergeant Slaughter come back as the American hero, team up with Hogan, and then at the Rumble, have a big tag match. And have it where, Slaughter turns on Hogan and beats him, and then you have Slaughter at like a big, I know Saturday Night's Main Event was not as big as it once was, but they still had them in 91, and you could have had a Saturday Night's Main Event, a big live one, and Slaughter could have won the title there. One, it would have extended Ultimate Warrior's title reign a little bit longer. Two, Slaughter versus Hogan, it would have meant something. It would have meant something a whole lot more than being the tasteless bullshit where they had to move out of the 100,000 seat stadium. They never would have filled, even if they hadn't done the war thing. They might have done 40 grand. But, in people, not in money. But they ended up moving to the LA Sports Arena. That actually turned out to be a great atmosphere. They would do international tours. Savage was retired at this point. Hogan would still face Slaughter, and they had good people on there, but they also had people that were aging out, and they didn't have as many to come in and replace them. Many that were ready, that is. And in the midst of this, British Bulldog had come back at the end of 1990, had some good stuff going on, and obviously was popular in the UK. Makes sense, since he always came out in the Union Jack. And this event is historic, because they realized that Davey actually was popular enough to maybe, carry something in the UK. He would end up winning the IC title at SummerSlam just a bit before. Well, let me try that again. A bit before a year after this event. It actually wasn't. It actually was a lot closer than you'd think, because SummerSlam 1992 was at the very end of August. So this was at the very beginning of October, and that's why I'm glad this is on WWE Vault, because what's really nice about this stuff is the fact that we can see where people were, and this is basically just a televised house show, but Davey really meant something to the UK. He meant something in general. He's very popular in the US too. It was hard not to appreciate Davey. And all that stuff going on is to how we got to this particular event. So, Lord Alfred Hayes introduces us, and we get synth music and some video clips. Monsoon and Heenan welcome us. Maybe it is entirely possible that they did the commentary there, but I think they did it via green screen, or via dubbing in later. I think they just did the green screen effects. Maybe they traveled, maybe not. I don't know. It just seemed like the audio wasn't quite right. But, Heenan had mentioned, where's the Queen's box? And Monsoon said, you keep it up, but that's where you'll be, the Queen's box. Gross. So, now we start with, one thing I did notice about this is, man, there were both some creeps, and there were also quite a few good people that unfortunately did pass away within a couple of years of this event, or have since passed on. And yes, this event is coming up on about 35 years old. Coming up in October 2026, provided the world isn't irradiated by that point, and aliens aren't watching this shit. But then there are some creeps, like noted child predator, Mel Phillips. See, this is why I don't respect Linda McMahon. Why not only she was a terrible, on-screen performer, but the signs were all there that she would, go to bat for people that were really, really bad. You're telling me you couldn't have gotten a better goddamn ring announcer? You had Howard fucking Finkel. You had other people you could have poached. You could have just gotten Gary Michael Capetta back from WCW, and it would have worked just fine. You could have gotten anybody. You could have still had Mike McGurk. You could have done a whole... I can't remember when Mike McGurk actually came in. But the whole point is, you could have done so much better than this guy that, quite frankly, was an average ring announcer announcer at best. If he wasn't a creep, if he wasn't a moron, and I'm glad he's dead, and I hope he suffered, and I hope if his family's still alive, I hope you know that fans are glad that he suffered, and that he died horribly, and he should have. And if he had any goddamn family that's still around, then his family should be shamed for not exposing what the fuck he was. But that being said, Mel Phillips is just a goddamn piece of shit, a moron, and a goddamn creep. And he's not the only one here. There would be too many to dive into. I just wanted to say that about Mel Phillips. I was saying about Linda McMahon being, one of the heads or the head of education, for this criminal administration we got going on. She doesn't even know what the fuck is going on. She doesn't even know what AI is because she's a moron. And so the indications were she was a goddamn idiot even back then, going to bat for Mel fucking Phillips. So the Nasty Boys, with noted cokehead Brian Knobbs, and if he wasn't, then he certainly seemed like he was on it, and Jerry Saggs, with Jimmy Hart in the corner, taking on noted other cokeheads, Marty and Sean. The crowd was very hot to begin, and the match was more mat-based. There were some matches on this show. This is like a 2-hour and 38-minute show, and man, some of the matches on the show should not have gone as long as they did. This went about 17 minutes, and probably should have gone about 12. The faces did do some armbar switching, with, quick tags that actually the referee didn't see. They targeted Sean, a hot tag. We did get a 2 count near fall. And then a distraction with the megaphone being smashed over, I believe, Sean's head. Or maybe, no, it's Marty's head. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, there you go. That was what it was. The crowd was hot for it. So it was what it was. Backstage, Flair still has a big gold belt. I think between this and Survivor Series, they made a deal where he got his deposit back, and then they would just use an old tag title belt for that and digitally knock it out. Speaking of which, Ric Flair against Tito Santana. Heenan made a comment about, being fed stuff that didn't feel comfortable, tea and trumpets, and Monsoon says, it's tea and crumpets, huh? No wonder it didn't go down easy. So commentary chats of Hogan making movies and appearances, and Heenan was gold here. Santana was still great. Maybe a couple minutes longer than it needed to be, but it was what it was. Heenan made a comment when it seemed like Santana was getting beat up. I smell picante. My God. Compared, something with Santana to eating a bad burrito at 3 a.m. And Flair was healing up. We did get a figure 4 using the ropes. The match did break down. We got a toss off the top, so Flair still can't hit that move. He got hit with a lariat, but then eventually, rolled through on a roll-up and use the tights. 1, 2, 3. So there you are. Mean Gene also would do interviews like with the Big Boss Man. Man, he was like a big kid. Poor Big Boss Man. I say poor Big Boss Man and also poor Earthquake, because they were going to have a match here. And Earthquake and Big Boss Man are 2 of the best big men. This match shouldn't have gone 15 minutes. I want you to think about that. These 2 guys at this point, even though Boss Man was good, even though Earthquake was good, 15 minutes. And we got side headlocks, we got rest holds, and yes, you need to rest, you need to take a breath during this. But had this been a nice tight 8 minutes, I think it would have been a lot better. And then Zaguri by Boss Man. Then the Mountie shows up because he wanted revenge for SummerSlam. That segment that is aged like milk. If you know, you know. And Earthquake ended up winning. This match was not good. It was better than the following match. Don't worry, I'll get to that. Mean Gene interviewed Kerry Von Erich. I'm pretty certain he probably thought he was in Israel or somewhere else, because I don't think Kerry knew where he was at. And then the Mountie and Jimmy Hart on the stage. I like the interviews on the stage near the ring. I like that shit. But yeah, the Mountie against Kerry Von Erich. Man, Kerry Von Erich just couldn't stay ahead of the law, could he? This sucked. This was terrible. Kerry, yes, the foot thing. This is the one bullshit narrative that I hate about world-class pieces. Because the news is out there, or the reports are out there and everything, and the criminal history and other pieces that don't care about, pushing the narrative have shown this. Kerry was busted with drugs, pills and stuff like that before his accident. I'm not saying that it didn't make it worse. I'm not saying that he deserved to suffer. I'm not saying that. But let's not act like Kerry was an innocent flower before he ended up having the accident where he needed to have the prosthetic, foot there. There was lots of stalling here, probably because Jacques Rougeau noted that Kerry wasn't able to do all that much. There were sleeper holds and rest holds that I think took up a good chunk of this 13-minute match. And a corner bump with a roll-up, using the ropes, won it. And that was, it was not very good. It was not very good at all. Kerry still looked great, and Kerry got a good reaction. Much like the Von Erich dynasty, it died off. So, post-match skirmish, not particularly great. This show isn't terrible because it's a nice, neat little time capsule, but it's not great. And a funeral parlor pre-tape. Taker is going to kill them all. God, if only that could happen to certain people now. So, there is an organ at the Royal Prince Albert Hall. And it is cool. There was somebody in the Phantom of the Opera mask playing that as Taker made his way to the ring. That was neat. That was a cool little atmospheric thing. And then we had Taker and Jim Duggan. And no. No. The crowd was chanting USA. That's how much they love Duggan. Duggan got choked for about 18 minutes of this 6-minute match. And then Duggan used his massive piece of wood all over Taker's back. And got it in his guts. And Taker won by DQ. Piper is fired up, and he's coming after Heenan for all the comments about the kilt. And then Typhoon's in the Battle Royal. Those are the only two guys that are in the Battle Royal that did not work already. They had Hercules at that stage of his life, and Paul Roma. And Paul Roma wasn't a bad talker. It's just they weren't given material, and they weren't given much to use. So LOD took on Power and Glory. It was longer than their Mania 7 match, and I don't know if it should have been, because this was pretty dreadful. A slam off the top got the victory in 9 minutes. Again, house show match. I'm not saying everybody needed to go full board. I'm sure people were tired. I'm sure it was a long flight. I get that. But just they were sleepwalking through this shit. Speaking of which, Bulldog beat Barbarian. He got a massive pop. Bulldog, not Barbarian. Great as Barb is. And the atmosphere alone is worth seeing this match for, because it's like a lesser version of the match that Bulldog had with Warlord. Almost said with Warrior. My God. Bulldog trying to carry that sack of shit. But yeah, he did hit a nice power slam. 1, 2, 3. So there you are. Bulldog got the victory. And then we had more interview pieces. I think Nasty Boys got interviewed, and Knobs probably snorted every bit of Bolivian powder there in London. And 20-man Battle Royal. Everybody that worked on the card already. And Typhoon and Piper. That's pretty much it. Piper instantly attacking Flair was pretty nice. They have history going back to the Carolinas. Kerry Von Erich, however, did not get eliminated because only one foot touched the ground. I will never stop making those jokes because they did it to themselves. It would be tough to do that, but look at the history of World Class. I don't even want to hear, by the way, that if David Von Erich hadn't passed away, that that World Class would have gone on. World Class was doomed to just have a bubble burst by 86, 87, no matter if any death happened or not. But, bodies start flying, and Flair got tossed out by Piper, and then Piper ran to the Undertaker. They ended up having a skirmish. The final four were Bulldog, Bossman, Mountie, and Typhoon. And Davey won after eliminating Typhoon. Earthquake came out. They had a brief skirmish, and Lord Alfred Hayes was pretty much screaming at Davey to just get away. And then to close, we had Andre the Giant coming out pretty much like he did at Mania 7, and because he'd had knee surgery recently, I think. Andre at that point, even if he had gotten the acromegaly, I believe that's how it is fixed. I don't know if it would have worked, but this was sad. This was really goddamn sad because Andre would not even be around for more. That I think he wouldn't even be around for another 15 months. He died near the end of January 93. And it's just really fucking sad. I mean, he was like, oh, he's moving pretty good. No, he really fucking wasn't. It's a bit of a chat I had with a friend just before recording this, and it's right. Line that stuck with me. That being said, though, pretty great atmosphere. Pretty cool stuff to see. Check out the WWE Vault. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Retland, and until we revisit the UK wrestling scene when it was good once again, happy trails to you.